Hi. Okay. So in this video, I'm going to talk about, let's see, aggregate functions. So before I do that, though, I want to explain something that's kind of silly and maybe a little stupid, but um, so in the last supplemental activity, it got longer and longer and longer. And there's lots of topics that I want to cover because I think they're important, but I didn't cover them all from Module 3. And the biggest thing that I didn't cover was aggregate functions. So I thought, oh, well, I'll just make it go to next week. I'll put it on next week's um, supplemental activity for Module 5. That'll be fine. Well, then I started getting some complaints from students that they're feeling overloaded. So, what I've done is I've just put in the aggregate functions into the supplemental activity queries module 5. So the aggregate functions are actually in module 3. But and there's nothing else in this particular module or in this particular supplemental activity. So even though the name of the supplemental activity is Queries Module 5, the information that's covered is in Module 3, and that's aggregate functions. And I'm sorry that that was confusing and silly and everything. It just worked out that way. And so next week, I'm hoping to put topics for aggregate functions, not aggregate functions, but topics from queries um, on Module 5 into the queries Module 9, and then just add more to the queries Module 9 piece. And so hopefully it'll all work out. But I don't want to overwhelm you. I want you to learn Access, but I'm not really into overwhelming you. So I'm sorry for all that confusion. But anyway, so what I want to talk about is, again, aggregate functions. And so I want to particularly introduce group by, count, and sum. Now there are a number of other aggregate functions, but I think that's really all the time, all that we have time to cover. And if you're interested in knowing more about them, certainly you can go and research about it. Okay, so I'm going to send me off to the side so I can start covering the material. So again, here it says I'm going to talk about aggregate queries, group by, count, and sum. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to show you in Access how to create the totals row so you can do a group by aggregate function. So what you want to do is you're going to come up here to totals. So this is under design. So we're in design view of the query, and we're in on the design tab, and you can click on totals, and you'll see right here that a totals row is created. And if you look, if you click and the down arrow, you'll see that there's group by there, and you can pick it. Okay, so that's how you do it. Of course, there would need to be a field here as well, but I'm just showing you how to actually do the mechanics of setting up a group by query. Okay, so now that you've seen the mechanics of it, it's like, well, what is it? That doesn't make any sense to me if I don't even know what it is, and that's true. I understand that. But here on under Select Query Concept 1, I have an explanation, and I hope it's helpful to you. So what you want to think about is a list of food items. And it's a big long list, and it's repeating, like at a grocery store. You go to a grocery store and you have maybe you have more than one item that you buy. Well, yeah, you'd have maybe more than one item, but of a certain item, you might buy more than one, and it might end up on the receipt more than one time. Here comes my dog again. Anyway, so you can say hi to Phoebe. Anyway, so it might come up more than once. No, Phoebe, don't breathe. People don't want to listen to your breathing. So the way that grouping works, though, is that even though you have a long list that may be repeating, it picks out the individual items that are non-repeating. So let's say you have butter listed on the list 5 times, and you have milk 2 times. I'm just trying to make sure you don't hear her breathing. So you have milk 2 times, and then maybe you have bread 3 times. Well, if you did a group by on that, it would be milk would show once, butter would show once, and bread would show once. Only once. So it's like taking the list and smashing it down and just summarizing each individual item that occurs only one time. Okay, so that's what I try to explain here. And group by is a little bit complicated, especially when you go to 2 and 3 and 4 fields. So let's move forward, and we'll take this example here. You can take a table of contact data and then think about the state, for example. And the state may repeat numerous times because different people live in different states. Who knew? Anyway, so if you come down here and look at this example here, I'm showing you the data here, just so you see the data, and you can see that like Utah repeats and Colorado repeats. And so what happens is in this query design right here, we bring down the state and we do a group by, like I showed you a little bit ago, and it gives you the results of all the non-repeating occurrences right here. It says Arizona, California, Colorado, and Utah. And so it is true that each one of those occurs in this data. My pizza's here. Just a second. Okay, back to going over these this group by concept. Okay. So here I'm talking about a more complicated grouping where you have more than one field. And when you have that, it gets more complicated for sure, and it's more difficult to understand. Anyway, so I tried to give you an example of cards here. So this is your data here, right? Let me point to it here. This is your data, okay? And you'll notice that we have different records, okay? And they have different card numbers and then the suit, and they're all matched together. But when you come down and you would do a grouping of that, where you get the unique non-repeating occurrences, then it would be smashed down into this right here, this right here. So let's go back up here and look at this, okay? So for example, we'll notice that ace of hearts occurs 3 times, right? So down in our grouping, remember grouping would only show one occurrence, but it's the combination of ace and heart that we're looking at now, and that occurs together 1 time. You'll notice that ace is listed twice, but here it's also listed with diamonds. So the combination of the two together are what's unique, what we're looking for uniqueness. So ace diamonds occurs here, and so we list it here. It occurs 1 time in this particular data, but no matter how many times it would occur in this particular data, it would only be listed in the grouping 1 time. Okay, hopefully that's clear because it is confusing. If you look at the king of clubs, okay, the king of clubs is only listed here 1 time in our data, but it could be listed numerous times. But no matter how many times it's listed, the king of clubs, it's only listed in our grouping 1 time. And here the king of spades, it does actually occur twice, but we only list it once. And it's the combination, king and spades together, that is unique. So anyway, you can ponder that a little. All right. So here I just wanted to reinforce your understanding, and so you can read that. Looks like I misspelled both. Anyway, down, and so here are a couple of exercises where you can try it out for yourself so you can see what happens, and you can try it with 2 and 3 fields. Okay. All right. So now we're moving on to learning about counting, and you want to think about counting in terms of just counting the records or counting the occurrences of something. Okay. So here's a very basic example where we've got the totals row turned on, and we count the occurrences of STR student ID. Well, when you do this particular query, you're counting basically the records. That's what happens. And so in this particular table, that, TBL semester hours, there's 694 records. That's basically what happens. But in any case, it's counting the occurrences of STR student ID. So this is a very basic example. If we go down, I put a lot of little pictures in this time. So let's go down and look at a different example here. And we can go back to our example from before, where this is your data, and then we grouped it together. And so all that happens is, like, for example, ace of hearts. We say, oh, well, ace of hearts occurred 3 times. Ace of diamonds occurred 1 time. So it just counts those, okay? That's all it's doing. And so if we come down a little ways, here's an example in Access, okay, where we bring down the city, and we do a group by total in the totals row, and then we also do a count, okay? And so if you run that, you can see that these are the cities that are non-repeating, and then this right here is count, and so it's counting the number of times that each city occurs in the data. Okay, so Holly Springs occurs once, but Raleigh occurs 10 times. Okay, so there's 10 contact records with Raleigh in it. Okay, strong. Okay, and so here's a couple of opportunities for you to practice that. All right, and so this next concept is about the fact that summing it's about summing, but what I want to say about it is that sum and count, people often get them confused, and it is difficult to think about when do I use sum and when do I use count. And for the most part, you want to use count when you want to count things. And so most of the time when you're counting, you might be counting plants, or you might be counting dogs, or you might be counting houses or whatever. But with sum, you're summing numbers. So the field usually has to have numbers in it, right? To total values, it has to really have a number in it. So the data type of the field probably is number or is currency. I think that's all I can think of off the top of my head. But yeah, number or currency are the two data types that you can use sum on, is a general rule. There's some other occurrences or some other situations where you might use sum, but those are some of the situations where you would use sum. So anyway, moving on. Enough sum explanation. So here's a demonstration of sum. And so what I've done in this query is I brought the donation value down, and I just said sum. And then if I ran it, it would total all of the values that are listed in that field, total donation value. And so it comes up with $6,075. Okay, that's the total. Okay, so now we have a query here where we've got two fields. We've got the description and then the sum. And so what happens is that this description field is brought down, and so for every item in the description field, every unique item, it'll sum all the values together for a particular unique item. For example, here in description, I can't remember, maybe there's shoes, for example, and it'll go to every single record. It'll find out what the value is of those shoes that's listed in the donation value, and it'll total them up, and then it'll list in the output shoes and then the total donation value of all the shoes. Okay, so anyway, in here, this is an example of a query. Okay, and it looks like they don't have shoes that I can see, but they have like antique clock. So maybe there was 5 antique clocks, and the donation amount the total of all 5 is $275. Okay? So hopefully that's clear to you. Email me if it's not. Okay. Anyway, and so here you can show your knowledge and power, and that's it. That is the whole entire queries, Module 5, that's actually Module 3. Incognito or something, I don't know. Please make sure that you let me know how many hours or how long you're working on stuff so that I can stay in tune and try not to overwhelm you. I want you to learn Access, but I'm not interested in killing you. So anyway, thanks so much.